Okay. Yeah, I hope it. Test. Thank you. Now I need to do a trick, right? So for the third time, good morning to you all. No one knows this. My name is Ofir Arkin. I'm the CTO of Insidix, and I'm here to speak about network access control systems and some ways to bypass them. Since we're late, like in 10 minutes, I'll try to go over all the slides in the time that I have. I'll be speaking here, basically introducing what is a network access control solution, what should or may be part of that kind of a solution, how these solutions works, where are the different problems that these solutions suffer from, and also we'll see how we can also bypass many of the different solutions. This should be an interactive discussion, so if you have a question, please raise your hand. I do have a problem to see the far back since these lights like kind of interesting. But if you would like to ask questions during the presentation, please do ask. The presentation is updated on my own personal website, so you can go and download the presentation, the updated presentation from there. It is it's very much different than the presentation that is on the CD. A bit about myself. As I said, I'm the CTO and one of the co-founders of Insidix. I'm also the founder of the security group, published research papers in different subjects, spoke at various BlackHats for several times in the past, and I also member at the Voice over IP Security Alliance. Okay. So network access control. Well, basically, why do we need it? If you look at the IT today, then we have a lot of different threats on our internal networks. Viruses, worms, information theft, roaming users, and of course the lack of the control of the IT infrastructures. That led some companies to implement security solutions to try to control the access to their internal IT networks. So there's, since I think 2004, a new breed of software and hardware that has emerged that tries to solve this problem of controlling who accesses the internal network. The definition of what is a network access control, and even the term network access control, may vary from one vendor to another. But the general consensus is that this is a set of technologies and defined processes which aims to control the access to the network, of course. I would like to state that network access control is a valid technology, and it is something that you need to consider as part of your internal network security. The problem here is that we don't have any kind of common criteria for network access control. So there is no definition what are the different parts that the network access control should have, and also different vendors may have different parts. There are some different initiatives for network access control, from the Cisco Network Admission Control to the latest Microsoft Network Access Protection to the Trusted Computing Group, to Trusted Network Connect, to others, to the different many vendors that may offer an NAC solution. In a glance, the basics for a network access control solutions must be the ability to detect a new element that connects to the network, and of course the ability to see if that element complies or not with the security policy that has been set before. Another basic capability that must be supported by any network access control solution is the ability to restrict the access of those elements which do not comply to the security policy. But of course, there are other components and other parts of the solution that may or may not be introduced with a vendor's network access control offering. So we've been speaking about the element detection, and there is also authentication, which means the ability to ID and authenticate each user that access the network, no matter where they are authenticating from or which device they are using. This is actually a very tricky one, and it means that if you support authentication and you provide a complete solution, it means that you must have the ability to authenticate those users who remotely connect to your enterprise as well. Endpoint security assessment is basically the ability to assess whether a newly introduced network element complies with the security policy. Usually this is done through using a certain agent, a client on the checked machine, usually only for Microsoft Windows, checks the operating system, the patches, the patch level, whether or not there is antivirus software, whether it is updated or not, and basically in most cases that's it. Remediation is the ability to say, well, this machine is not compliant with the security policy. Quarantine it to a separate subnet or VLAN, and we'll be talking about these in a few. And then the ability to introduce them to remediation servers that will allow them to fix the issue which prevented them from being connected to the network. Authorization is basically something that most of the network access control solutions lack. Not all of them contains this. But basically authorization is the ability to verify the access rights of a certain user which accesses the network. Basically saying whether it should or shouldn't go to a certain place or access a certain server or resource. And usually it means that the network access control solution need to interact with the authorization schema that might be defined in one of the servers on the network, like Active Directory, Radius, or whatever. Another component which is usually neglected is the post-admission protection, which is usually associated with the continuous monitoring of the users, their actions, and what they're doing on the network. So worms, viruses, malware will still be able to be detected even if the user had been granted access to the network. Usually these share the same similarities as intrusion prevention systems, but it also involves with profiling traffic, profiling user actions, and so forth. So as I said before, the implication means that if we would like to control the access of each and every element that may connect to our network, whether locally or remotely, it means that we need to look at the local network, and we also need to look at the remote connections through VPN or other means. It means that we need to look at how these elements are connected to the network and put the means to control them through that. So on the VPN issue, we need to look at client-based solutions, SSL VPN, IPsec, and basically it will cover all those venues, and it usually will involve a specialized hardware. On the internal network, on that respect, we'll have to have usually special client software that would need to be installed on the element. And the most important thing that we will have to have is the intimate knowledge with our IT infrastructure in order for us to know how our network looks like and where do we want and how we will install the network access control solution. Questions until now? Okay, it's like everybody are quiet. Okay, we still haven't spoken about anything interesting. Cool. Attack vectors. What can we attack? What is there to attack? Actually, there's a lot to. First of all, and you'll see in a few slides that the biggest problem is the solution's architecture. The way a certain solution uses a certain technology in order to first find the elements that are accessing the network. Secondly, the ability to quarantine them? What are the different ways certain technology uses in order to quarantine the elements? And of course, what are the different enforcement methods? We will see that there are a lot of gaps into the element detection and quarantine abilities, as well as the enforcement methods that will allow us to bypass these solutions. And also, you can also try to attack directly the different components that compose the network access control solution, the remediation servers and all those servers that you interact with. There are several advisories out there regarding some of the vendors and their problems on their own remediation and part of the solution. So in this presentation, I will be covering several methods for element detection. I'll talk about the DHCP proxies of the world, about the authenticated DHCP. It's kind of fun because before the presentation, a marketing woman from one of the companies that sells network access control had sent me an email with their NAC offering, so I had to include them in the presentation. Broadcast listeners, switch integration, and Cisco and their 802.1x offering, as well as we'll look at the different hardware manufacturers, the inline devices, the out-of-band devices, and so forth. Before going into the different methods, I would like to say that some examples that are given here are taken directly from the vendor's materials. Some of the methods can apply to different architectures and technologies, even if they are not written specifically for one or another. And of course, other ways of offering that are not covered in this presentation would also, you can cross-reference that information with the information presented here. So, DHCP proxy. Well, the most easiest way to deploy a network access solution is to use some kind of a DHCP proxy relay, or a box that would sit in front of the DHCP server, will get all the DHCP requests from the different elements that uses DHCP on the network, and basically through the usage of an agent will try to assess the security of the element that tries to connect to the network. The exchange of information is very simple. Basically, there is a DHCP request intercepted by the DHCP proxy. The DHCP reply has a non-routable IP subnet, and also, in some cases, static routes for the host side that would prevent the host, try to prevent from the host to access any resources it shouldn't. Then the DHCP proxy software, which is more than a DHCP proxy software, will try to probe for an agent software on the element. We'll try to assess the security of that particular element. If remediation is needed, it will introduce the element to the appropriate remediation servers. And then through release and renew, you'll get an IP address when this will be remediated. Well, nothing too complicated. That's also one of the problems of this method. In order to install DHCP proxy is very easy. Anybody that sits in this room, basically, I believe, that works in an environment that uses DHCP, you go with one box. You can use relay agents that will send you the DHCP request. So you get all the installation very fast. The problem is that this is only good for those elements that uses DHCP. So if you're using something else, if you're not using DHCP, this solution will be completely useless looking at those elements that may be having a static IP address. So at the end of the day, when I look at companies, then some of them may have an address space that this is an address space which gets DHCP address, but on the same subnet they may have another address space which might be reserved for servers or other users which have a static IP address, and nobody will be able to understand that they're there on the network. So basically, the easiest form of bypassing this solution, it's kind of, well, I don't want to use the word lame, but hey, I said it, is just to assign a static IP address to the machine, and basically you're off to go. The problem also with different companies is that part of the networks will be shared by servers and desktop, so part of the network will be DTP-based, part of the network will not be. Usually, the people that needs to know about it knows about it. So if I have someone which is a bit familiar with the IT network, he can easily assign himself an IP address that will not be blocked. This type of solution must have an agent software, because without an agent software, it has no way to assess the security of the element that it is checking. Also, the detection of the element is only done at layer 3. It means that the fact is that if I am on the network, I have all my local subnet I can access. So at the end of the day, if I would like to compromise someone and use that someone as a platform to access other parts of the network, I can do that easily, because there's nothing on my local subnet that would prevent me from directly accessing that particular subnet. Also, if the subnet, the broadcast domain itself, will contain more than one subnet, then that's a whole new ballgame. That's a big problem, because still, although other IP addresses which I may not be part of or belong to, maybe on the broadcast domain, I'll still be able to send them traffic and to get them back through the router, because I will be sending them the traffic directly and not through the router. So that's also a big no-no. So basically, we have a very nice local subnet which can be infected with viruses and worms. A local subnet that can be attacked, and some elements can be used as an access proxy to access other parts of the network that attackers do not have access to. And also, quarantine is usually based on giving the element an IP address which belongs to a certain subnet. And also quarantine the element to a certain subnet using ACLs on routers, again, easily bypassed. Another main problem is that users may access the network from different parts of the network, and not all of these parts would have DHCP enabled. Again, if you know where you need to connect your machine, you can connect your machine and you have access. Other problems is the lack of awareness for masquerading devices. Basically, if I would like to provide connectivity for another device through network access, through network address translation, then it is fine, no problem. There is no knowledge, especially when I'm doing that in a non-bridged manner. These elements will not be found, and you can connect whatever you would like to the network, and here you go, you have access to the network. Exceptions, I'll talk about that in a second. And also, just think about it, there is no real user authentication here, because the user is not authenticated to nothing. I come with my machine, I have the appropriate agent, I have the appropriate patches. Well, technically speaking, we'll talk about that later. And basically, I have the information that would allow me to connect to the network, but my identity is not proven. I do not, basically the solution does not know what is my identity. So, sure, my element complies with whatever needs to be done, but still, my identity had not been proven yet. This is a quote I found with a document called Network Access Control Technologies and Cygate Compliance on Contact by Cygate, now Symantec. And I guess you can read it for yourself, but since it's fun, systems without agents can be granted network access two ways. First, a non-Windows exception can be made that exempts non-Windows client from the NAC process. Second, a MAC address-based exception list can be built. That's great. So basically, if I have a problematic element, I'll just put an exception list. I'll put it there. I'll allow it access. So someone needs to know who are those elements that are on the exception list. Understand locally what are their MAC address and IP address. That's easily done. And basically abuse that and spoof that in order to get access when they're not there or when you disconnect these elements. And this is from, of course, the vendor's document. Yeah. I need to say that Microsoft Network Access Protection does have DHCP, but they do state in their documentation, and this is something new to Microsoft, that this is the worst ever way to do network access protection. So I have a quote from them later in the presentation saying that, well, it's not security. We just want to make sure that the element that connects to the network has the right patches. So basically, any solution, you'll see that most of the solutions out there today, they do DHCP-based, they do 802.1x, they do other things, but it's basically whoever does DHCP proxy is really not such a good thing to do. But we will touch 802.1x later, and you'll see that 802.1x is also something that if you don't do it correctly or in many ways, you can also have some fun there. It's fun because I saw someone from one of the network access control systems vendors wrote in his blog that sure, their customers ask them frequently regarding the problem of assigning a static IP address and bypassing the solution. But since they're not able and do not have the money or the will to deploy 802.1x, then they'll still go and implement the DHCP proxy, and it's okay with them. Well, you can judge yourself if it's okay or not. I don't think it's okay. So another funny solution, in my opinion, is I call it the DHCP in a box. Basically, it's another DHCP replacement that at the end of the day provides DHCP addresses to the network. And since it does so, it basically uses this ability in order to authenticate the user according to his username and password on the network. And only after the authentication of that particular user, it allows him access to the network. So basically, the solution components are not, well, solution components include the DHCP replacement box, an authentication portal, which can be on the DHCP box itself, and of course, your regular Active Directory or wherever you put your usernames and passwords. It may also have additional servers, patch management, vulnerability management, and others that can also be attached to the solution. But the exchange of information looks like this. Basically, an element comes to the network, requests a DHCP address, gets another quarantine IP address with the DNS server assigned to the DHCP box itself. So here I would like to go someplace. I do a DNS resolution. I get the IP address of the DHCP box. I go to the DHCP box. I have, of course, HTTPS using HTTPS. I have authentication form. I put my username and password. It's being cross-referenced to my Active Directory or wherever other place the information is at. And if the information is correct, then I'm granted access to the network, and everything is fine, and everybody are happy. That's one of the things. During the course of this process, the solution may or may not decide to launch additional tests on the element that comes onto the network. Basically, these tests may include a vulnerability assessment or a patch management solution trying to assess the security of that particular element. And we'll relate to that in a second. Theoretically, it sounds like a good solution. You know, oh yeah, I'll authenticate all the users. I know all the users because they are in my database. It's basically operating system independent because, hey, my Mac users and my Linux users and my Windows users, they all can do this all together. All in all, this is a very bad solution. I wouldn't recommend it. Well, if someone knows how to play with this, it's easily bypassed. All the same problems that we talked about with the DHCP proxy also applies, but the biggest problem here is that if you do not have a client software on the element that you're trying to assess its security, then you do not have the ability to really know what's the security posture of that element. So if I would like to have a vulnerability scanner to scan a certain element so I can understand if it is vulnerable to something, well, you know what? I can't assess its security because there are some information that I need to take from the element itself directly and not from saying, okay, this element does not have any open services. Well, you can't actually scan for all of them as well. And that's enough for me to say this element should or should not be on my network. The other problem here is that it is really, really trivial to bypass this solution and steal your credentials. You all know what rogue DHCP server is, because some of you, when you are on your network, there are sometimes guys, especially from QA or R&D, that installs Linux, and they say, oh, DHCP server, yeah, sure, I'll install that. Who cares? So you have another rogue DHCP server on that network, and whoever answers you, or basically the answers that the first answer that you get, this is the answer that you usually will trust. So basically what needs to be done here, just to put another DHCP server on the network and do the same stuff as the DHCP in a box that does. We'll give you the IP address of the DNS as my address. I'll give you a nice IP address that you can use, and you'll redirect your traffic to me, and I'll get your credentials, say thank you, and wait for the time that you will be disconnected from the network, and it'll abuse your credentials. Easy. Nothing new with that. Questions? Okay. Another breed of solutions is the broadcast listeners. Broadcast listeners is a good name for basically an agent software that is installed per subnet and basically listens to broadcast traffic in order to catch those elements that may or may not, of course, that will be on that particular network. It looks at different different packets, mostly looking to have ARP requests, NetBIOS, DHCP requests, and whatever it broadcasts to the network in order to detect the elements. So if I'm now going to use the term managed and unmanaged. Basically, managed is an element that has a client software by the vendor that is installed on it that allows it to assess the security. And unmanaged element is basically, well, you get the understanding. So basically, if I have a client software on the element that tries to connect to the network, the element broadcasts its traffic. The agent on the software catches understands that this element is now trying to get to the network, communicates with the broadcast listener. Basically, the situation or the posture of the security on that particular element is being assessed. If it needs to be remediated, it is. If not, it is assigned the IP address and it's all good. Who can tell me, looking at this particular scenario, what's bad in this scenario? This is an unmanaged element, and it accesses the network. And what's the problem with this scenario? Of course, it's assuming that I'm there, right? Assuming that I will hand the broadcasting traffic to the network, assume that I will use that. And also assumes that if the appropriate detection will be done, then by using a vulnerability manager, a management software, or some other software, again, the information about the host will be able to be collected, and the information that I need in order to assess the security of that particular element will be gathered, and also the ability to quarantine the element through something. So I don't have an agent, I don't control the calls, I don't control the element. So the last thing that I have here to do, since I do not control the DHCP, is to interact with the switches. So in most of the cases, I need to know where the switches are, because believe me, they are not on my local network, they do not share the same IP address, they will be managed through another subnet usually. And when you come to the organization that may have 3,000, 4,000 elements, you may have 200 switches, and understand who connects where, that's a huge problem. So unless I understand which element is connected to which switch exactly, quarantine these elements, well, it's very questionable. So weaknesses here, you have to deploy, you have to have access or information from each and every subnet. You must know what are the different subnets for an organization, what are the different locations you need to be deployed at. In some cases, I hear vendors that say, well, we come to the client and we ask the client to provide us with this information. Well, you buy a security software, you buy something that needs to secure your network, and you need to rely on information that is with the organization. And I guess that you all know that this information is usually partial. So in most of the cases, well, 70% of my network will be covered, but what about the 30 other percent? So the other venues to access that particular network may also be there without the knowledge of the IT network, because we don't understand how our network looks like and we don't know all the information about it. Already talked about the switches. Still, network access, network address translation. The word access is too much. I'm saying that too much today. Network address translation is still a viable venue to bypass the solution. Yes, I authenticate with one machine, but I connect to it my laptop from home, and I'm still able to access the network and get to where I want. Still, exceptions are being done according to MAC addresses because there's no real knowledge regarding the real operating system that sits behind the element, and also sometimes having that information is not enough as well. So just look at your printers, which needs to be connected to the network and allowed on the network. Understand what they're doing. Just a nice venue to access the network without being detected and just abusing the MAC address and IP address of these. Another interesting venue that we touched before is the ability not to generate broadcast ARP traffic. And I found out that if you, instead of sending the ARP request to the broadcast address, but sending it directly to the MAC address of the element you want to talk to, that works fine as well. The element will receive your ARP request, will communicate with you, no problem. No broadcast traffic whatsoever. No one will see you on that network. So still, you are on that network. You can infect all the local subnet. Nobody knows that you're there. And everything is happy if you're the attacker. The problem with unmanaged elements here is much more severe because of the need to interact with the different switches, their need to understand how the network looks like. If you don't know where the switches are, if you don't know where the elements are connected to, if you're unaware of these, then these elements will not reveal themselves to you. Questions before we go forward? Yeah. You can do that. You can introduce an out-of-band solution. We will touch that later on. These also suffer from some other, well, basically you can say that all the problems that you see here are also shared with the out-of-band solution. Because the type of information that it will see, especially if it's deployed at the access layer, will be the same as the broadcast listener, the same problems. If the out-of-band solution will be using a passive port which is after the router, meaning it will look only at IP traffic, that will be useless. Because then you'll also be missing, yeah, it's back. Then you'll be missing also crucial information such as the MAC address of the elements. And then when would you like to reference the information that you get from the network, you will not be able to do that. Question here, yes? Yes. Yes, you're right. I wish I could have something to give you, but there's nothing here. We'll be talking about that. Usually when you are on the network, you're able to do some stuff. So you can't be denied of doing some stuff. So basically you can abuse, and that's absolutely correct, you can abuse the ability to send, for example, DNS, and I won't ruin you the surprise for later, but the idea is that you can abuse those to tunnel your traffic through wherever you would like on the network. So if you have other people that may help you with your endeavors to break into that particular internal network, then you can bypass information tunneled through that through that particular port and do whatever you would like with the type of information, or to try to compromise those systems on that particular network which may have DNS installed. Other questions? Okay. Vendors. I must, or do you insist? Okay, vendors. McAfee, for example, All of those that only watch out-of-band traffic, Mirage networks, for example. Sorry? I don't know them, but oh, okay. If you're saying, I'll believe you. But basically, you can understand that as well yourself. I put that as a fun part. I'll try to be very brief because we're late. SNMP traps, who knows this type of solution? Basically, it's saying, okay, you know what, I have a bunch of switches. I'll configure them all to send me SNMP traps when they register a MAC address on one of the interfaces. So I'll know a new element is connected to the network, and everything will be fine since I know this element and I can do other things to it. Well, basically, that's another very big mistake, because the type of information that you get back, and especially this is all true with Cisco, since Cisco has this ability built in with any iOS whatsoever. It's a good ability, but not for network access control. And they don't aim to that people will use it for network access control. It means that when you can basically set up SNMP traps on a switch, and basically when the interface register a new MAC address on that particular interface, it will send you an SNMP trap saying on that interface that MAC address is now being registered. The problem is that you will be receiving multiple SNMP trap information from all of the switches that had registered a particular MAC address, and you will not be able to understand the exact location of that particular element. So that will be fun. Also, that particular issue even suffers more from broadcast listeners, because here, if you don't know where the switches are, you will not be getting this type of information. So if you don't have any adequate information regarding your network, that will be proven useless. As a matter of fact, not all switches supports this type of notification, so at the end of the day, you will not be able to get the information from all of your infrastructure. And in most cases, most of the organizations that, well, at least that I have met, may have hybrid networking gear from multiple networking solution manufacturers. So some of them may be able to support it, some of them may not. Basically, all the other problems also there. So we got to one of the funniest part of the presentation that I guess most of you came to see. It's okay, but not. You'll see the problems. Basically, Cisco, I think they were the first to introduce the concepts of 802.1x and network admission control, as they term it. I like to say in advance that 802.1x is the, from all of the element detection and the abilities to quarantine the user, is the best technology that is out there. Nothing is compared to that, especially when it is deployed correctly, and we will see when it is not. Needs to have a Cisco Trust Agent, basically an agent software that is installed on Windows-based machines or Red Hat 9. The Cisco Network Access Device, basically a router or a switch which has the appropriate iOS on it that supports network admission control, and the Secure Access Control Server basically says whether you're compliant or not with what needs to be determined. There are like 3 enforcement strategies with Cisco. First of all, it's NAC L3 IP, basically only deployed on routers triggered by an IP packet. There is NAC L2 IP triggered by either a DHCP packet, a DHCP request, or an ARP request. Applies per interface of the switch or router. And there is the NAC L2 802.1x, which is basically triggered by any data link packet that may reach the interface, and then the network access device knows that you're there. A lot of blah, blah, blah. Basically, very good way to secure the access to the network. Very good encryption and all protocols. It's not the point of failure, although in that respect, when the element is able to interact with many different components on the network, and you all remember the talk of last year by that spurred out a lot of talk by Mike and Lynn about the iOS problems and everything. You know that interacting with switches and routers can be hazardous. Also, when you need to interact with remediation servers, they will also be a good target for that. So that's also a possibility to attack them, but this is not what we're going to talk about. NAC L2 802.1x, that's the best thing that you can deploy as long as it's deployed on switches. And it is deployed on switches, and basically when your switch is the access switch, that's the best thing they can have, because before an element has an IP address, it's basically quarantined, it cannot do anything, and you are able to fully control the element. It's also, I see it as a good thing when a security technology is embedded inside the networking gear, and in the case of Cisco, that's a good thing. Also, their ability to put different cards inside the 6500s and do other security stuff is very good, because you don't have to introduce other boxes to the network and other things to the network. But it also has many different weaknesses. First and foremost, it works only with Cisco equipment. So if you don't have a Cisco equipment, or you're a hybrid shop, then basically you are not able to deploy that, or you can deploy that but partially. 802.1x is usually very difficult to manage. It's not an easy thing. If you try to go over the different deployment and configuration guides by Cisco, it's not trivial. Especially also that not all of the networking equipment that you may have on the network may support this. You may need to upgrade it or replace it. There's a cost that also needs to be associated with it. And also not all of the elements that may reside on the network can do 802.1x. Sorry? What do you mean by non-Cisco? Sure. Yes, but I'm looking at Cisco. I mean, I said earlier in the start of the presentation that we'll be looking at different vendors, different architectures. I may not be looking at all of them, but you're correct. There are 802.1x that are non-Cisco. There are companies who, other like other networking gear manufacturers that do 802.1x at the access layer, the access switch. These are all good solutions. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm talking here about what Cisco does. So if I have a component on the network that is not able to do 802.1x, I should have the ability to do an exception for that particular element. And also there's also a cost for doing this. But the problem is also with Cisco is what network admission control capability you would like to have. If you deploy either NAC L3 IP or NAC L2 IP, then you have the ability to bypass these solutions. And why? Because first, L3 IP is being deployed using routers only. It means that all the local subnet that you may be connected to will still be able to be infected with whatever you would like. And still, if you would like to attack one of the systems and use this as an access proxy to reach the other networks, then you still will be able to do that. Also, the NAC L2 IP, it applies per interface. It's triggered by either DTP or ARP. So if you do not trigger these, you'll still be able to tunnel through traffic through that particular interface. And also, it applies per interface, but still you're able to connect a hub, a Cisco IP phone, and basically have another network or another subnet down there that the switch will not be aware that it's actually not a direct connect. Not that it's not a good thing, but still you'll be able to connect different things to that particular area. Again, the problem here is that when you don't have the particular Cisco Trust agent, you need to manually configure exceptions, so you'll be able to connect all of your devices that do not have the agents, such as your Macintosh machines, such as your Solaris machines, Linux machines, and all those machines to the network. There's also an offer to do exceptions by device, by Cisco device, according to the CDP. Well, that's another not such good thing to enable. So basically, if you have no knowledge regarding what the exception is, you have no knowledge regarding the particular OS, so you can go to an element that you know that it is an exception, plug it out in the network fellowship, and you'll have the same access rights as that particular device. Especially with L3 IP, you can still infect the all local subnet and still own machines on that particular network without the knowledge of that particular network access control means. There's also the ability to use an audit server to audit several elements on the network if they don't have the Cisco Trust agent, meaning to fire up a vulnerability management solution, assess the security of the device, and then say, okay, it is allowed or not on my network. Again, the same problem here. If I know how to defend my particular element, then I will be able to have good defenses. I'll be able to admit myself to the network. Another problem is, which is also shared here, is the inability to detect network address translation. Still able to detect whatever virtualization solution that is a freeware to the network, and basically use that in order to allow other element through an authenticated element to get on the network. And of course, when I don't know how my network looks like, I do not know where to go and which switches and routers I need to enable in order to do network admission control. The gentleman here that actually said before talked about the ability to do DNS. Here's an example from the Cisco Network Admission Control Framework Configuration Guide that talks about which are the different protocols that needs to be enabled and what is the default quarantine ACL that needs to be deployed on the routers and switches. As you may see, the UDP to DNS is allowed to everywhere that you would like. Of course, everybody needs to support EAP over UDP and such. So still, you're able to tunnel information through DNS. You will be able to tunnel information through other means. These will be still available for you as a venue to pass information. Since they stole my 10 minutes of my time, I'll go real quick to another thing that I would like to say. I swear I'll finish in 5 minutes. Okay. There are several endpoint security assessments that can be done using agent or not using agents, and there are some issues here as well. First of all, it's a good thing to have an agent on a box. Tells you what's the security posture of that particular machine. You get all the information you need. You're able to do good quarantine, good remediation, and everything. The problem here is that we have one big problem is that we need to know where to deploy these type of clients. Because if we don't know what's on the network and which are our devices, we're not able to deploy the clients where they need to go to. Also, and this is something that not a lot of people are talking about, is what is the type of information that are actually these solutions are looking for. They're looking for the OS version, they're looking for the patch version, they're looking for the service pack version, they're looking for the patches, they're looking for the antivirus, and they're looking for the different patches installed. How many of you ever played with the Windows registry? How many of you have seen how it's easy to change these values? So basically, if I would like to put my computer, which may not have the right patches or may not have the right operating system version, all I need to do is, in most of the cases, is go to the registry keys that holds this type of information and manually change them. So I will be able to admit myself to the network. Still don't have the real software, but my Windows registry tells me that these are the right values and these are the right checks that needs to be there. Another point that I would like to make about the risks that are out there. The risks usually are, of course, that there's a risk mitigation when we say, okay, these elements have the type of software that we would like to have on the network, and we sure lower the risk to our network. But at the end of the day, the type of risks that we would like also to combat and network admission control, network access control may or may not help us to do is, first of all, to defend against 0 days. So still, even if I have my patches, even if I have the accurate information, even if I have my antivirus signatures, a 0 day will still be able to infect me, and then it will still be able to get to the network. And also, if someone knows how to use this, if someone knows how to attack and use a 0 day, my network is still vulnerable. The funniest thing still that I would like to make, and maybe it will be my last point, is that most of the solutions take a certain element which does not comply with the security policy and put it on a separate subnet or VLAN and quarantines this element. Usually it will be a one happy family of problematic elements that will share the same subnet. So if I'm an attacker and I would like to attack an internal network, I don't care to be admitted to the network. I don't want to be admitted to the network. All I want to do is be on the quarantine side. Because guess what? All those elements that are on the quarantine side, these may share a certain vulnerability. These may share a certain problem. These may have a problem themselves. So what I do, I need to admit myself to the quarantine side of the network. I need to understand how these elements are vulnerable, if there is something I can use in order to attack them and penetrate into them, because not all of the agents that may be installed on them may support firewall, may support other things. So still they are vulnerable to certain types of attacks because, hey, they were not admitted, right? So I will go, I will attack them, I will put something that not a lot of people knows about, and maybe the security companies that put the agent on do not know about, and I will be able to control them, although, oh yeah, now they're admitted, now they're remediated, but still I have control. So that's another big thing. So the solution for that is to put each and every one of them in its own private VLAN without an access to another one, because if you're still able to access them when you're in a quarantine, that's the end game. That is even worse than admitting yourself without the need to be there. Let's see if there is also something else that I want to say. Questions real quick? Yes. Yes, let me just see. Okay, I just want to show this. Basically, this is a statement from Microsoft. I do appreciate them putting that on because at the end of the day, they already understood what this is all about. And let me just put the first slide or one of the other slides. Other questions? So thank you for having me and thank you for your time.